Welcome to the video format of the Entrepreneur Lifestyle Podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to our podcast using the link below. And now enjoy this interview. So today I'm here with Alara, who is a messaging and positioning architect for tech founders. So she works with tech founders who have a genius solution for huge problems in the world, but paralyze their audience with an overload in techie language. Alara, welcome to the show.
Hey Ben, really good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So what is your story in 60 seconds or less for our audience to get some sort of idea of where you've been and where you are now?
All right, so I actually graduated as a geology graduate. By the time I got to the end of it, I was like, okay, this is not for me. And I kind of felt a little bit lost. So I ended up going on I ended up going on this gap year where I kind of found myself, I guess. And I really realized that one of the things that really drove me was kind of helping people find this unique contribution that they can make to the world, and not only find it, but actually find their raw with it as well, like get them to spread that, get other people on board with it. So I started working with other gap year students to just help them figure out what that is for them. Didn't really pick up as a business model, but what I did end up doing was I kind of worked as a career coach with a lot of people that ended up, like they were in a great career, but it just didn't, it wasn't fulfilling for them. It wasn't aligning with that gold that they had inside of them. So that kind of, I worked as an NLP coach. So I got qualified in NLP and I also qualified in yoga. So it was very much about kind of uncovering like, what is this
Yes.
why that you have the gold that you have inside of you, and how can you like make your decisions align with that? And the way that I kind of ended up working with tech founders is actually one of the prospects that approached me. They were a tech founder and they said, hey, I love what I do. Like, that's not the problem here. The problem is that, people just don't get it. Like, people get really bored. Their eyes glaze over, and like, it's a real shame because I feel really passionate about what I'm doing. He was in credit security, so like at face value it is like a bit boring, you know.
Yeah.
So being passionate about credit security in itself is something to be proud of. So I actually ended up kind of doing a bit of a test round with him. I ended up taking him through the same process that I took my career coaching clients through, but rather than from the angle of kind of discovering that gold, it was more about just putting words to it so that then he could weave that through his pitch. And he ended up doing that. He got the pitch that he wanted. He got the investment that he was looking for kind of within that month after like 6 months of searching. And I was like, there's something here. So I kind of started experimenting, working with tech founders. And my journey is kind of very much through experience. I don't have any degrees in marketing. I don't have any degrees in tech, and yet like I'm working with tech founders all over the world and kind of helping them find their voice, which is amazing. And they're getting really amazing results. So I'm actually kind of really proud of myself of where I've got to, because I feel like now I'm at the point where I'm not only helping people discover what that gold is, but also helping people, tech founders are this unique breed of people that they know what their passion is. They've kind of actually taken action to do something about it, but like they're at this kind of bottleneck where now it's time to get people on board, and it's just not happening. So because they've been in it for so long, they're like overloading with people with techie language. So it really fulfills me what I do now, and it's kind of a journey of this self-discovery journey of kind of understanding what is the type of impact that I'd like to make, type of impact that I'd like to make in the world, and kind of I get to do that every day. So
wow, amazing. Well, it definitely seems like you've got a very fascinating niche with regards to tech founders. It was very, very unique when I was checking you out. Now, I know when you obviously first started doing this, I think some entrepreneurs have no idea where they're going. You kind of fell into this. How did you decide that this was the niche for you and you really wanted to hone in on it?
With tech founders, you mean? Yeah, well, I didn't, like when I first started my, the only thing I knew when I graduated was that I have a better way of making an impact in the world, and I kind of need to discover what that is. And it was actually for the first few years, it was just trial and error of like just trying different stuff. And like one of the really things, like biggest things that I'm passionate about is like just going for things, even if they don't feel perfect. I feel like there's this culture of like, you do not deserve to like be in contact with real people or charge money until you're, like you spent 10 years. And maybe like as for a doctor who's like cutting you open and the consequence is life or death, like, okay, fine, that's a little bit different. But I actually think the best way that you can learn is through trial and error, and kind of some of the best people in the world, in the industry that I'm in, kind of have worked, got to where they are at with just learning and actually doing it. So with regards to kind of how I decided that tech founders was the niche for me, it was just trial and error, like what worked, what felt good. And the reason I ended up kind of sticking with tech founders is because they're kind of they're very serious people. They're very kind of identify as logical people that, I don't mess with emotions. And they kind of describe themselves in a very kind of pragmatic way, yet they're so driven, they're so passionate, there's so much like stuff boiling under the surface. And I just find it really fascinating, kind of like seeing them just blossom and like seeing the like them come to life when you actually put words to that, and they can actually start to share that, and actually their image of like, I'm super serious and I only talk about logical stuff, like starts to at least get a little bit like it kind of loosens a little bit. So I find that really satisfying. It really kind of brings joy to me to see someone open up like that. And especially people that kind of having the impact, that type of impact that they're having, because a lot of them are really tackling big issues in the world.
I think being able to articulate what they're saying is so important, and I think so often the message is lost, especially in this the sea of sameness that we experience now. If you're not really on point, you often get lost in that sea.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff to it, right? It's not just what you say, it's the energy that you say it with, kind of there's the graphics to it as well. I'm not going to sit here and say that messaging is the only part, but messaging is one of the most important parts. I find that even outside of business, like I find that most of the places that we kind of, I guess, get unhappy or kind of find friction is when something is misunderstood. Like with my husband, like I love him to bits, but all of our arguments at some, like to a certain extent, comes from a miscommunication. And I think miscommunication is like it's a word that's thrown around a lot, but we're really complex beings. Like humans are really complex beings. Like I'm really passionate about kind of like the brain and like the layers of it, and kind of like the way that our brain processes stuff. So I actually one day mapped out all the different layers that information has to go through when communicating, and I was like, okay, first of all, there's the intention, and then there's kind of how you want to manifest that intention. So like you might choose some words that kind of articulate the intention, and then there's kind of the beliefs that you have around the way that you've chosen to say it. So it kind of like goes through all these layers of like the intention, the words, the beliefs, the actual way that you say it, the tone of voice that you say it with, and then kind of the context that you're saying it in, and then they have to receive it, and it goes through the same filters again. It goes through this filters of like, what do they believe, what's their kind of, what's the context that they're hearing it in, what's the way that they would interpret that. They now have to reverse engineer all of those back to your intention, and kind of like match that with what they're feeling, and then they have to give a response. And kind of I ended up with like 14 different layers or something, I think, in communication, where something could kind of get misunderstood. So in an ideal world, I would create a machine that just kind of like helps, like in this conversation we would be able to just communicate my intention, like my core intention, directly to your core intention. And cut out the 14 layers. I don't know if that's possible right now with the technology that we have, but that, that's why I think that I'm really passionate about communication. It's not because like, it's great in business, but actually like it is the foundation for the way that we thrive as humans. Like the more the better we communicate with people, the closer that we feel, in our personal relationships with our friends, in business. And the more closer we feel, the more connected we feel, the stronger we are, the more sense of a belonging that we have. And that's kind of really what the human race has really thrived on, is when you have people that have a sense of belonging, that have a sense of connection, you start to become pretty unstoppable. So that's kind of I guess the goal, to create people that have that. Because I feel that there's so many different opinions in the world, like political, and it's really easy, not just political, and that's the only example, like the political and like around gender, and like there's a lot of discoveries that's happening at the moment in the world, and I think it's really easy to kind of polarize yourself and define someone by their actions. And as easy as it's to say kind of like don't define someone by their actions, it's really actually hard to do, because it's very hard to put words to what really are they trying to say, where are they coming from, what is the context that they're coming from. So I feel like I find it fascinating, like when you just have a conversation with someone that you kind of inherently disagree with and you really connect with the human side of them, how much of a sense of belonging that you can create with someone that you're meant to be kind of enemies with, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that communication is obviously more important now than ever,
Mm,
especially with how distant I think a lot of people have been. Being able to interpret that online is very important. And obviously, that's a lot of what you do with your clients. Now, when you first started, you're mentioning that you almost pulled the plug on the business within the first 4 months because it really wasn't working. How did you push through that? And what was it that really started to work for you as you started to build up this business?
that's a good question. I kind of ask that to myself as well. it's it's really hard not to give up, and I probably would have given up, actually. The reason I didn't is because the routine that I had set myself, when I first started my business, I kind of set myself a routine to get up at 6:30, go for a run, like do some meditation, go, and today we're going to do the really boring jobs of, like, I actually, like, I started off on Facebook, and I would literally just like be active in groups. It was kind of a bit of a cringy way of going about it. I had to let my ego down because, like, I was like, I don't really want to be like cold messaging people, but
Mm,
I had to start somewhere, and kind of this imperfect action was like one. I just had to do something. So
yeah.
so I had a routine, and kind of like, because I had that routine, like it became, even on the days where I was just like, I'm not feeling it today, just having a routine like that really kind of got me through it. And my husband was kind of like, I don't think you're there yet. I was like, next week, if I don't get my first client this week, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
get a job. And he was like, I don't think you're there yet. And just having that like mental safety net that
Mm,
if it all goes to shit, like, it's fine. At least I've got someone there. And that was really powerful for me. I know that not everyone has that kind of mental safety net, but
yeah.
um, I think it's definitely something that you can create yourself as well. It doesn't necessarily even have to be like a family member. It could just be like a community that you're a part of. Another thing for me was I was part of I didn't just kind of start my business out of scratch just on my own. I think I purchased a course, which at the time, like, it felt like extortionate amounts of money. I think it was like 2 grand US dollars. Um, and at the time I was like, my parents were like, you spent what on a course?
Yeah.
Actually, it kind of like took me through step by step, like what aspects of businesses do you need to focus on, like how do you build a business, basically.
Yeah.
And it also had a community associated with it. It was called Consulting Accelerator by Sam Ovens. And yeah, and just surrounding yourself with people that are doing it kind of raises your standard, because I think it's really easy when you're in that rut of like nothing's working, like you're not getting results for your action. It's really easy to convince yourself that no one's going to give you money. Like
Yeah.
like what you have is just not valuable enough, and that no one's going to give you money, and you're not going to make it. So I think like surrounding myself with people that I had millionaires in that group that were talking about, their biggest problem was not having enough time for stuff. And I was like, oh, I wish that was my problem. That was kind of
Yeah.
like an
Yeah. Yeah.
upgraded problem. I mean, it's a problem for me now, but at the time, that was like, I wish I had that problem. um so yeah, I would say surrounding yourself with people that kind of give you that, A, raise your standard, B, give you the kind of the mental safety net that, like, if all goes to shit, you're not going to die. And also, there was this one day where I just had the worst week. Like, no one was replying to me. In fact, I think
Mm,
I got a few rude responses, and I was just exhausted, like just doing really monotone like outreach work. And I just sat, like, I was meditating that morning, and I just kind of went into this mode of like all the different stuff that I was grateful for, kind of like my
sure.
upbringing and like the environment that I was in. And like I think, like, with the practice of gratitude, the more you think of stuff, the more detailed things you start to be grateful for. Like,
Yeah.
first started off with the big things like my parents and my family, and then places
Yeah.
I lived, and like opportunities, etc. And then I kind of started going into like the birds singing outside right now, like the temperature is just beautiful, like the
Mm,
fact that I just feel because the seating position is really comfortable, like you just went into like the most minute detail of things that you're grateful for. And like when I felt grateful at such a granular level, I had this, like, I just kind of came out of the meditation, and then I was just I had this epiphany of like, this problem of the business problem felt so
Mm.
insignificant, because I was like, I'm just going to take the steps that I need to take now. Like, I'm just going to do what I need to do now.
Brilliant.
And like, it kind of really, really grounded me in this kind of present moment thing. And I think like a lot of the burden when you first start your business comes from the worry, comes from the mental burden that you come, as opposed to like the reality. I think like if you can just keep your head down and take one step at a time,
Yeah.
um,
Fantastic.
it's
I
amazing the
I
effect.
definitely agree, and I think that you've obviously mentioned a ton of different things there. I think one of the most important elements there was about having that very clear routine. I think
Mm,
a lot of people struggle when they first start out is because they don't know what to do and they don't have a very simple system to follow. And I think being able to have that has obviously helped you in leaps and bounds to be able to move
yeah.
forward and move past that struggle to be able to move forward. So as you've gone through that journey, what do you wish you knew when you first started? From perhaps the marketing standpoint, obviously finding those first few clients that is
Mm,
really working for you now that perhaps you've struggled with at the beginning?
yeah. Um, the biggest thing for me was that don't put people on a pedestal. Like, I think I was talking to these CEOs, and like they have a very good way of like making you feel like insignificant and you're like this, and like that people were asking me, so do you have a degree in marketing? And I was like, no, and I felt that because I was putting them on a pedestal, I was undervaluing what I had to offer, and I was kind of I couldn't stand strongly in my own skin, and kind of that meant that I charged lower prices because my value of myself kind of went down, etc. And I
Mm.
kind of gave huge discounts. So I'm not saying don't give discounts to starting off with. I think you just need to do what you need to do to get some people rolling. And but the biggest thing for me was the mindset, like the mindset of what I believe I'm worth and how I show up with these CEOs. And a lot of the time, actually, the more I spoke to these kind of founders and these CEOs, the more I realized they actually, it's a real breath of fresh air for them when when you can be a little bit, assertive is the wrong word, but kind of when you're not just kind of cowering under their presence. I think that's very refreshing for them. And especially with the companies that I work with, it's that they're talking to loads of people per day, so you're kind of a fraction of their day. So if you can actually, apart from the service that you're providing, if you can actually be kind of a little bit refreshing for them, a little bit, a lot of my clients describe kind of the work that we do as very therapeutic. Like, they're not paying me for therapy, but if they get like that sense of like, they look forward to that session, and they get that sense of relaxation, that sense of kind of a little bit of a self-discovery in our sessions, like that's great. So I would kind of say, as an advice to my earlier self, like, just um aim to add a piece of like a breath of fresh air to people's day, and regardless of who they are, because people appreciate that, and kind of that helps you stay confident in your own stance as well. And that kind of then that shows up in pricing, that then shows up in confidence, that then shows up in kind of conversion rates, etc. But it kind of, I think for me, it started off with like showing up as a human, and aiming to just add a little bit of brightness to someone's day. And I
Yeah.
think in order to do that, you can't put someone on a pedestal. Like, you have to see them as, the conversation as something collaborative. And if I guess have that confidence to be a little bit more assertive than you might feel in the
Yeah,
first.
yeah, yeah. Okay, brilliant. I think that there's a ton of different golden nuggets that you've shared there, and I think being able to obviously articulate better our messaging is so important in what we do. For those listening who are feeling inspired by yourself and everything that you're doing and putting out there, what would be the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Probably the best place would be LinkedIn. I'm super active on LinkedIn. I'm posting kind of videos every week,
Yeah.
or multiple videos every week, kind of just helping you little nuggets of actionable advice. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Alara Vural, and also just check out my website, alaravural.com,
Mhm.
where it's just a little bit more information on there. They're
Okay.
probably the two best places.
Got it. Fantastic. And if there was one last thing that you wanted our listeners today to take away in order to have a clearer message, if they were to struggling with that, what would you say that one golden nugget would be?
Um, try to lead with the more human part, rather than leading with the businessy, kind of super businessy front. Like, don't be afraid of having showing up as a person first, and then a business second. That's in kind of the way that you interact on social media, actually interact from your personal account rather than your business account. That's in the way that you actually write your website, rather than having a headline that speaks to the what you're selling. Have a headline that speaks to how you want people to feel when they finish working with you. So just little nuggets that let's start with the human first, because that's what creates the emotional connection, and emotional connection is what inspires action.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I love that so much. So for those listening, make sure to look at the emotional side as well, not just logical, and be able to be a
even
human.
if you are a tech founder that doesn't connect with any of that, and it sounds like all gobbledygook.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to reach out to Alana, and we will see you in the next one.